So, good morning, everybody. I'm just looking at my hair. All right, I had to take a few days off because once I was set free by my mother, what do you mean by that? You haven't even talked to her. Well, I don't know. A lot of things go on that hard to explain, and even if you did explain it, the people believe it, and people think people are crazy. So, it doesn't matter. I was set free. Finally, there is nothing to resist anymore in my world. There is no past to resist. I've released the demons. Even this last weekend, as I was thinking about all the stuff about the giants and just so much stuff that you're seeing on my Facebook, I was so bloated. I went to a celebration of life party to somebody that fought in the Vietnam War. And I didn't want to post too much about it because I didn't know the person. I mean, I knew the person, but I didn't know them that well. And I wasn't like close to them, but I knew them and they were fun. And so, but I didn't want to capitalize on their death because I didn't know them that well. I didn't know them well enough. So I just posted a picture of myself and my husband and someone that he knew, just to give acknowledgement without turning into something that because again, I'm not trying to capitalize on people's situations to further my own agenda. That's not what I'm about. And I didn't want to cheapen that situation. And so anyway, so I took on a lot of different microbes. I didn't drink any alcohol at that celebration of life. I just drank my soda and hung out with people and just listened to people's stories about the person. I've never been to a VFW before and hung out, and I got to learn about stuff like that. But I definitely felt very bloated this weekend, like extremely bloated this weekend. And I had to take a nap. I even watched the newest Barbie movie. I was like, wow, okay. I see definitely where the world's going. And so this morning I released a bunch of demons this morning, like, oh my God, I was so bloated this weekend. And then released a bunch of demons. And then even like what you call an afterbirth. What's an afterbirth, Jillian? Well, it's like a bunch of mucus that comes out right after you release so many demons. So I gave birth to so many ideas, or released a lot of demons. And I gave birth to so many ideas and thoughts. And you see them on my Facebook. I showed you the whole progressive thought process from my last video to this. And it's always, every single time I give birth to new ideas or release the demons and give birth to new ideas, I do all that releasing the demons. Then it's like maybe an hour or so later, I'm giving birth to a mucus plug, like releasing it. It's weird. And it's just a little mucus thing. It looks like a colony forming of something that I couldn't tell you why it's there. It's like when you give birth to a baby, right? There's the baby, and then you have the placenta. I'm thinking, like, is that little mucus thing? Is that like a placenta of sorts that came out of my ass? I mean, it's some interesting stuff here, but that was like, and that was a bigger mucus plug type of thing after giving birth to all these ideas. And what I released this morning was like, holy crap, there was a lot of stuff, and it was pretty insane the amount of ideas that I came up with the last few days, ever since, I don't know, it's like Thursday or Friday. I forget which day it was. And so I'm just going to go through the progression of my thought process. So I get it out there, and I also can cement it in my brain. Okay, so I'm just going to go all the way down. I'm not going to go through every single post. I will go through a lot of ones that are relevant. It might be, I'll probably skip through, I don't know, we'll see. But I have to go through a succession progression of a thought process. But there's only so much I can post, like on my live whatever thing. But I post whatever I can. It doesn't really have a limit, but there's still so much. And I'll tell you, the last video that I did had the most views to date. Over 1,000 views on that video. I don't know if you can see that, but that was when finally my mother set me free. And again, it was a message that only I knew, and it had other stuff in it that I'm like, okay, yeah, this is my mother. I don't know how she did stuff, but I'm not even going to go there. I'm not even going to go there. And so, all right. So history is written by the winners. So don't die, and write your history and live for yourself forever. Okay, so that was the last video I did. Main takeaway, history is written by the winners. So don't die, and write your history. And so this whole succession of life means that you really have to get away from the antibiotics. If you want to stay alive and see the new world for what it is and what it's going to be, and if you are strong enough to fight the microbial battles and listen to indicators and be in the right place at the right time, and that means staying home and staying safe, because right now we are heading into even more turbulent times because of what's going on in the Middle East and people's feelings about other religions, and other cultures. We already had stabbings of somebody, a landlord that stabbed one of their tenants who happened to be a Muslim, and people who are anti-SCMITE, and there's that. We have protests. There's some pretty crazy shit going on. And so, in my opinion, if I was you, I would stay home for the most part, because as things are heating up over there in the Middle East, things are going to be heating up all over the world. And home is the safest place. It really is. And while you're at home, you could then be gaining your life back, facing your ancestors, facing the demons, and feeding your body. And there is a whole infrastructure of food out there that you could use to rebuild your infrastructure as you release the past without completely decimating your platform, without completely decimating the past or what you came into this world with, because you still need a bit of the past in order to evolve into the present, okay? So when you spend your whole life taking and developing antibiotics, you will eventually become antibiotic and die from antibiotics. That's biological karma, okay? So no, the holistic doctors did not die at the hands of Big Pharma. They took their own remedies in the holistic world. And it's a self-fulfilling prophecy, okay? So remember those stories back 5 years ago, 6 years ago, 10 years ago, when they were saying, oh God, it's Big Pharma eradicating, all the holistic doctors. No. It's the alchemists, holistic doctors, and the homeopathics and naturopathics that take their own remedies, that believe in taking away the pain and curing themselves and using so many aggressive concoctions against their immune systems, thus developing offspring that are altered and that work against the parent, which is them. Okay? And so I said, nice try, MLM, or selling your friends supplements, because you're using that story as a way to gain leverage over your customers. Well, that's not going to wash anymore. Okay? That's not. I mean, I guess it could if you really don't intend to live and you don't really intend to evolve, and you intend to destroy yourself and your family and other people by blaming because of your own practices. But now we are getting a chance to finally face the fact that we have been led astray because of somebody else's agenda. And we're being given a choice to believe or disbelieve, okay? All right. All right, so now I see people on my Facebook that say, well, they would rather overprotect their kids because they're that kind of mother, and I get it. I mean, I wouldn't want to put my kids out there on the street, of course not, when there's predators and when there's things like that. But there's ways to protect your kids without overprotecting them. But there's ways to protect your kids from the things that will do them actual correlation equal causation harm, and there's ways to protect your kids from turning into psychopaths, and turning into sociopaths, and turning into predators. And so then you have to figure out, what is it that causes people to be predators and predatory? Well, obviously it's the overuse of antibiotics and drugs, and of course alcohol and crazy amounts of sex, but also the violent images and the aggressively sexual images that are all over the internet and movies and TV. And it means you actually have to be a parent to monitor what your kids are watching so they don't turn into psychopaths and sociopaths and sexual predators. So people who overprotect others from valuable life lessons may actually backfire. Being so overprotective of your kid can turn them into extremes when getting a taste of freedom, and we are seeing what happens to kids who turn into adults when they were sheltered by way too much from their parents and shown violent images of sex and destruction at such a young age. Okay, so it's not always lucrative to be overprotective in anything. Sometimes the pain of lessons will save their lives later. And that also means feeling the pain of release, but also how do you temper it to where it's not so energetic that it wipes them out, and how do you manage that? And then what will the system allow you to do with yourself and with your kids? And if you're that far gone, too much behind the 8 ball, then the system will monitor how you figure out how to balance food and release and the pain and the energy of pain. Okay? And so it's not always lucrative to be overprotective in everything. Sometimes the pain of the lessons will save their lives later. But if you overprotect your child, they might not survive the pain of the hard lessons. Overprotection via remedies and whatnot equals died suddenly. Okay, so then, as you see, as I said in the most recent post, that when you are overprotecting yourself with remedies and shielding somebody from the choices of their life and not understanding how to adapt to changes, then when the environment does change, they won't have what it takes to deal with that energy conversion and with that change. They would try to remedy themselves. And right now it's happening. People remedy themselves out of existence. And then they die suddenly. Okay? And so that's what happened to the Olympians or the gods of the Greco-Roman times, the Sumerian pantheon. Okay, remember the cradle of civilization? And then we know that there was Star Wars out there, and I won't say aliens, but there were other beings that gave us life, and they came down to this earth and they used humans as slaves, mining gold from the earth, because yes, gold is a huge absorber of radiation, and it was also used, of course, in the Ark of the Covenant. Now, I'm jumping all over the place, but I want to give you some kind of background around this. That I figured out the Ark of the Covenant was a nuclear reactor. It was an energy weapon that was used to, yes, destroy so many things of antiquity, and also even redevelop continents and redevelop civilizations, and even destroy civilizations, and potentially even raise the temperature. And cause a different climate of the day. Okay? And so, yeah. So that's why the Olympians did not survive those huge giants, because man, his children figured out, the demigods figured out how to outsmart their own parents. And so if you don't know how to outsmart your parents from destroying you, then you'll end up like your parents being destroyed. And that's kind of what's going on right now. We are living history right now. Okay, so that's what you're doing to your kids. If they cannot handle the pain and suffering and hard lessons in life, especially when you have also bred predators in the population, which is why there are so many predators in the population. They were overprotected by their parents, brutalized by their peers, and never developed a backbone, so they became brutal predators to compensate for being a victim their whole life. And it's all connected. I am more afraid of those who could not evolve from painful lessons and then overprotected their children to be brutalized by their peers for being different, developing aggressive serial killers in the population. Okay, so you can see those ones that don't look like that they're serial killers, but they are the meek and the maybe they're even, introverted, but there's so much brewing underneath the surface, and it only takes somebody to go and trigger them, and then trigger them, and then you never know what comes out. And so I am more afraid of the parents out there to these kids who will become victims. Seriously, when the system knows you are okay with death and destruction, they will channel your intent into FDA-approved protocols and temper your overt behavior into something useful for the system. If you have been shown violent images of sex and human destruction already in your family at an early age, the system might use you to be a patsy for something. You've already been programmed by your parents, and now the system will use you, and the system will use your children. They already have. Conversely, if you've never understood the world you lived in and you were extremely sheltered by your parents, you might find yourself attached to a drug kingpin who you fell in love with. Parenting is not something people should take lightly, and people do, and it's a fad, and it becomes a tradition. Okay? Every single one of us and you was used by the system to show you do a specific action, they will show you what you programmed your kids to show you. Do a specific action. I don't know what the fuck I said there. They will show you what you program your kids to be like as an adult. Yes, parents, you are responsible for the outcome of your children. And it's convenient to say everybody has a choice. Maybe, but not everybody does. And that's what I figured out from the message from that troll. Not everybody has a choice in the matter. They have been programmed so hard by not only themselves, but also their parents and the society that they don't have a choice. They have been shut down by the men and the women and the families around them who they have put themselves in. They have allowed mainstream people to shut down every bit of potential evolution to get out. And then they have so many kids on top of that. So they took away resources from themselves, put the resources that should be for themselves into their children. And so they're that far behind the eight ball. They're that far gone. The programming ran too deep. They got into a situation they could not get out of, and you couldn't protect them anymore. They had to account for the sins of the father and the sins of their mother. That's what happens when you don't hold your kids accountable, or yourself for that matter. The environment will hold them accountable, and the culture, and the people around them. And sometimes people don't survive accountability. Now look at your Facebook. Look at everybody's parenting styles and their belief systems. And look at how they treat disease. And you will predict the outcome. You will predict the outcome of that family and of their children. And they will hate you for it. Because they know, but better they know now than later. Okay? So when you see people out there, and they're in the remedies world, they're in very specific religions, are all about dying. Someday absolution, praying to a god, or demonizing somebody. You know they already believe that people should die someday, and they're going to either say that this person's going to save them in the afterlife, or they're going to say that person destroyed them. That's how the system built in the death and destruction of those who are the children of the giants who enslaved and brutalized the humans way back in antiquity. And so I said, some men do completely shut down their wives. And not only were the women psychologically brutalized by their husbands, but physically as well, made to procreate over and over again, as well as do other things against their will. Save the women from other women and men. Save the women from the families. Wow, it is really brutal out there. Do not be fooled by the smiling faces and the plastic surgery. Just wow, the suffering in humanity is astronomical. I mean, yes, you can say that parents do have responsibility. Yes, they do. But also the human getting into a relationship with someone, but maybe they didn't know because they didn't know better, because that's all they knew was someone to control them and someone to brutalize them until they either save themselves or continuously be brutalized by that person. And if you continuously stay in a situation where someone is brutalizing you, then that's the choice you made at that moment in time. And so then you become even more behind the eight ball. So the suffering in humanity is astronomical. Some of you will survive it. You have the tools to. Some of you will not. No matter what, I can say I did my best. I really did my best. I'm so sorry. My best is not enough. I must save myself. Okay? And I said, thanks, Mom. Everything was for a reason. Hugs, take care of you. All right? So I was given the gift of my mother that I didn't realize until later on, until I understood why I had to go through what I had to go through. Because I'm telling you, when you go out there in relationships and in families and in society, you are in a war. A microbial war, a religious war, a political war, even a physical war if somebody wants to take your resources without paying for it or without asking. All right? So yes, mothers can be your biggest assets or deadliest liabilities. My mother to me was and is the best asset. She gave me the tools to save myself. No one could have done that for me except for her. And save could mean different things to different people. To you, your mother could be saving your soul, sending you off to heaven. Okay, thanks for your service. If that's your religion and you believe that, that's great. Thanks for your service. Now I understand. I believe my training was done. Now it'll take you a while to write it, okay? And humanity has another option to work from. And so you can all thank my mother for this. And remember, she came from the Jewish world. Ashkenazi Jewish, which is no different than the Sephardic, really, when you think about it. The Jews were scattered because of all the different things that were going on way back in antiquity, way back even before that. And so the Jewish people definitely understand the bigger picture. And even the Rosicrucians, which is the Jewish people, the Jewish mystics, the Christian Gnostics, the Catholic Church, okay? And all the different religions, offshoots, but some obviously want to go and die someday, okay, fine. And they want to worship someone, okay, fine. But also the Greco-Roman people, which is, I guess, the Catholic Church and even Roman Catholics. And then the Hermetics. That's the same thing, Greco stuff. Egyptian. And we even have some of the African Americans and the black culture also go back to antiquity. And some of them were pharaohs, yes, and were also slaves of the pharaohs and enslaved other people. And so you can only imagine that if there was pharaohs that were black that were enslaving other cultures, and maybe they were giants. Maybe that's why the tables have turned the last 200-300 years to show what it's like to be a slave. We had to see slavery and the brutality of what the giants did to us and what man can do to each other to remember. And of course, World War II, to remember that it should never happen again. But it does as people keep procreating intolerance and extreme capitalism. But then, of course, when a society wants to advance itself, it must develop a nation of slaves, of people to, yes, build up the infrastructure and take cues from those who are directing society and directing advancement. But eventually, they will get to a point where they don't want to use so many humans to enslave. And that's why we're going to artificial intelligence, robots. So we can enslave the robots and we don't have to enslave mankind. And we can bring mankind up to a very aggressively, intellectually advanced level so we never have to deal with the suffering of humans doing menial labor ever again. Can you imagine what it was like back then? 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 years ago when you're toiling in the fields or mining for gold or mining for coal. You saw that even in the 1800s, 1900s, the coal miners. Even today there's coal miners that get black lung and are suffering from preventable diseases, okay? So you can only imagine what it was like to be out there doing menial labor, digging ditches, and being in harm's way and having somebody crack the whip on you. I mean, that can't happen again, but it had to, so you saw what it was like and you felt what it's like because everybody has taken turns in being a slave to somebody. And even right now, animals are dealing with the slavery of their owners. As you know, some owners are better than others, but there's some pretty aggressively brutal owners out there that some of these animals are suffering under. And so even then, you know, we're still experiencing what our parents, the giants, have done to us way back in antiquity. Okay? So you can thank my mother for this. She gave you all the options in the world through me, and she's Jewish. So Jews are not bad. Absolutely not. Anyone who hates the Jewish people, you have been sadly mistaken and you have been sorely misled. And there's no such thing as a fake Jew. You're either Jewish or you're not. And you can also convert to Judaism because there is Jewish conversion. It's not Judaism, it's not just ethnic. Though maybe there's a lot of people that come out of the Sephardic Jews or come out of Africa and Western Asia and all of that. But there's also the Northern European Jewish people. Okay, it's really a shared experience of finally questioning the brutal ways of mankind who learned from the brutal ways of the giants way back when. And you could see some of them. I mean, when you watch some of these movies, like let's say Orange is the New Black, which is such interesting that I'm watching that during this time, and they're making a lot of references in more of a vignette of the different segments of how Muslim and Jew get along or don't get along, or why people convert from being a black Muslim to a Jew, which was one of those segments when this girl in the show was like remembering what her father was saying at the dinner table and him just pounding the gavel of brutal forced beliefs that she didn't understand. She didn't understand why it had to be that brutal. And so sometimes it's a shared experience of being enslaved under somebody and then questioning the belief systems, questioning the ways and all of that. And so you can convert to being a Jew based upon how you understand what Judaism is. And it's not just ethnic, okay? That's why I was converted to be a Jewish person way back when I was a kid, because we were raised in questioning everything. We were raised in understanding the world that we lived in. We were raised with diversity. We were raised with trying and to figure out what is the question. I wasn't looking for a Messiah, because there's Messianic Jews out there. I'm not looking for a Messiah. I am my own Messiah. When you think about it, that's actually a really Jewish foundation, is that when you realize that you're the one that holds all the questions and the answers, and then also the evolution. Okay? And that's the thing. So there's no such thing as a fake Jew, as I've seen all over the internet, from extremely ignorant people. I mean, extremely ignorant people. And even though some of them are my friends on Facebook and we've been through the conspiracy world together, I've evolved way past them. And I have evolved way past them. Because you see them putting the symbols of the satanic symbol and the Jewish symbol as if they were one of the same. Though everything's about balance, yes. Doesn't mean they're all satanic or they're all about, life. It's a balance. Everything is a balance. You have to understand everything is a balance. And even the Christians have to understand there's a balance between life and death. And how do you balance that within your body, mind, and spirit without destroying somebody else and without destroying yourself? But if you've been only told only to look at the good and destroy yourself, and death is good no matter what to you in your religion, then you are the balance of death at some point as you give life to a certain amount of resources in your short life, and then you will absolve yourself through then death is good. Okay, so then if death is good to you, then why are you demonizing another religion? And so that's the conundrum that people who don't understand the balance of both positive and negative, when everything, even the negative, is positive. And it's still a little confusing, yes. But anyways, let me give you a little lesson here about Ashkenazi versus Sephardic. Ashkenazi Jews come from Eastern Europe, Germany and France. That's why that's why we give money to Ukraine, because Ukrainians have a lot of Jewish people in the Ukraine, and Russia has happened to have the Tartarian giants, right? And the Siberian giants, Tartaria, Russia, and the Mongols, and all that, the Genghis Khan, you hear about the giants of Tartaria and the mud floods and all that, and the architecture. So I'm slipping that in so you understand there's a point of reference in this, okay? So Ashkenazi Jews came from Eastern Europe, Germany, and France, while Sephardic Jews are from Spain, Portugal, Africa, and the Middle East. Most Jews in America are Ashkenazi because of the large population of German and Eastern European Jewish immigrants who arrived in the U.S. between 1850 and 1900. Okay? So there's a little education for those who are that fucking ignorant on my Facebook, who are passing around some fucked up information. But all sides of Judaism are just as credible, and it's relative to the intention. Anyone who hates anyone Jewish has been radicalized to destroy anyone who's different to them, or they want to blame. They can't take personal responsibility, so they have to blame somebody. They all wanted to believe all the fucked up stories. But why don't you look at all the mistakes of mankind, regardless of the political parties, religion, and belief systems? And I feel sorry for anyone who has that much hate in their heart. All of us are trying to survive. Why make it harder by hating somebody else and making their life difficult because you don't agree? And so if no one has come into your home, why are you taking a side against anyone? Let the people it's between fight it out, and they are in the Middle East. Stay out of people's wars. Let the government figure it out, because they will, and they are. Just save yourself. So if you're out there protesting in the streets, regardless of which side you stand on, no one is going into your house. No one has told you to do something and forced you to do something, believe something, eat something, take something, or anything. But there are people out there in the world that live next to people who hate them, who, if they didn't have the protection, they would have been eradicated and genocided a long ass time ago. Why do you think people are so protected and armed to the fucking teeth over there in Israel? Because everyone around them wants to genocide them. All right? And that's no different than out here. Why do you think some people have to protect themselves? Because people out here in America and other places, they're so fucking intolerant that you have to protect yourself from them. Or they want your shit because they don't want to break it on their own. Or they're on drugs. Okay? And so when you have to protect yourself from even your neighbors, that ought to tell you what we're breeding in our society, which must be bred out. And if you don't get that by now, then you are probably one of the aggressors who want to take from other people and take shit from other people. If you don't get that. And so there's a method to the madness. And so with every positive, there will be a negative. And it will always be balanced by the same people. Now you get a choice. There is no enemy because balance can be people's enemy. Failure to balance is what people are resisting. When you stand with people you really have no relationship with. Some people say, oh, I stand with this person, I stand with that person. No, you stand with whatever it is that you're in right now. You stand with whatever religion that has a specific belief system, an intention, and an outcome. You stand with people who are in your house, in your neighborhood on some level. The positive and negative. But I don't say I stand with anyone, really. I stand with people who are tolerant. I stand with people who have given people chances and then has to go and do what they have to do to either leave the situation if they must, because they're forced to, or defend their position. And if they have the means to defend their position where they can stay put, then they must do what they must do. Okay? And so, I'm not going to read this whole thing, but I stand with humans. I stand for all humanity. I stand for the survival of the fittest, and I stand for the most tolerant. And if you can't handle another person's thought process or their belief system or their background, if you can't handle that, then that will speak to almost everything in your environment, of which the environment will change and you will not be able to handle the environment, and you will do yourself in by your reactions. And remember, we live in a world, especially in the West, of the rule of law, the rule of the justice system, and law enforcement. And so remember the land of milk and honey? Milk is life, honey is sweet, anti-life, antibiotic. Remember, all the baklava has a lot of honey in it. And you have milk, which is the life. Okay, so the balance of positive and negative, right? Not that I'm saying that we should eradicate anyone, but you need to have both types out there to balance out the positive and negative. But if you choose to really destroy people through your positive or negative, you can be toxically positive and toxically negative, then the environment is going to weed you out. All right, so balance, plus and minus. Now you have a choice if you have discernment. All right, so now the number 7. And I just realized that the Anunnaki, when I was studying the different pantheons of the Anunnaki, the Sumerian pantheon, remember that? When I had it all on my wall and I was over in the room, my dog was still alive at the time, and I had all the different papers of just everything. And I was showing you all my notes of where things were and how I organized it in my head. But I didn't know what I was going to do with it, but I just needed to know it. And that's the thing. Sometimes you have to study things and read things that you may not understand how it connects in the bigger picture, but eventually it will connect once you finally understand everything in your world. But if you're so compartmentalized and only study one little thing and only understand one little belief system, then you'll be so blinded by everything else around you, you won't make the connections, and you'll just be easily reactive and then adopt somebody's thought process that actually is going to work against you, because you absolutely have no idea how everything works. You haven't bothered to even find out how it all fits together. And so, yeah, there are 7 deities in the Sumerian pantheon, which is part of the cradle of civilization. And maybe those were the giants too, back in the Middle East, the Philistines, that were also enslaving humans, and maybe the Jews freed themselves from not only the Egyptian pharaohs, but also from Gilgamesh, because he was part of the giants of back then, the pantheon, okay, or the Sumerian pantheon. So no coincidences. It was 7 years ago to the month of October I developed the J world, the J juice. October 2010 was the month I met my husband, and October 2023 is the month I freed myself from resistance in body, mind, and spirit, and I didn't have to die, and I finally freed myself. My mother set me free, and I freed myself, okay? And I've known my husband for 13 years. Today is Friday the 13th. It was on Friday. I am 49 years old. Plus 9 plus 4 is 13. Holy shit, right? And everything's about balancing the dualities in the world. Now you get a choice how you characterize those dualities. And so 13 doesn't have to be, a bad sign. It doesn't have to be a harbinger of doom. It's all based upon how you characterize it and where you are in life and what you believe. If you believe you should die someday, and then 13 is a great number for you if you die on the day of the 13th. And if you believe you should live someday or live all the time, then you're going to think 13 is a bad number. And everything is how you characterize it, okay? There's always ways to look at number 13 and 7 and all those things. And so everything's about balancing the dualities in the world. But now you get a choice how you characterize those dualities and how you end up living or dying from the dualities. That's the checkerboard. If you want to know what the Freemason checkerboard is you have a choice. You always had choices, but you had to fight to develop to see the choices or see the choices that were right for you. So you had to fight to develop a choice, like the whole J world, developing a path to potential immortality if you can adapt to these climate change. No different than what happened to the Olympians back in the days of antiquity when we had all those Greek gods, those huge gods, the giants, that look like the people in Hollywood, but at a larger scale. Okay, that's why Angelina Jolie looks so freaking hot. She was bioengineered from the days of antiquity. That's why Aphrodite was so hot. Everyone fell in love with her because of all the hormone manipulation. And everyone was having sex with each other, in the Greek gods and everything, right? Everyone's naked all over the Vatican, all those statues of naked people. Well, no wonder everyone's so sexual and hot and chiseled and beautiful. Because they're all screwing each other, developing crazy-ass offspring that then became the other gods, like Hermes and Artemis and all the gods of war, Ares. All right? So that's why you have all the different statues and the reliefs in the Vatican and all the different, antiquity. I gotta say. All right? So that's the checkerboard. You had to fight to see the choices that were right for you. All right. And so then I was Googling, like, it seems Egypt's ancient civilization appeared far earlier than China. So even Egypt came before China. Did Egyptians come first or China? I Googled this. And it says, all existing archaeological evidence and studies from around the world support the conclusion that Egypt's ancient civilization appeared far earlier than that of China, despite the shared similarities. And then, what came before Egyptian? During the Neolithic era, several pre-dynastic cultures developed independently in Upper and Lower Egypt. The Badari culture and the successor Naqada series are generally regarded as precursors to the dynastic Egypt. The earliest known Lower Egyptian site, Merimida, predates the Badari by about 700 years. All right? And that's why I said study those cultures. All right, whatever. Okay. And so then I said, yeah. All right, yeah. And then I actually said this. Motherhood. I had reshared that last video that I did because I wanted you to see where finally the turning point of me finally being free from resisting my past, the way I was raised, the way I just did things, because I was not trained to be like everybody else. Believe me, if I was, I wouldn't be where I am today. Just wondering why the fuck is it? It sucks being kind of lonely, not like everybody else, but whatever. I'm not really lonely, but not many people understand where I'm coming from. Some people do, but many people don't. I would say most people in my world don't understand where I'm coming from. They don't, and I get it. And so motherhood is responsibility above no other, and it's not something you take lightly. Your mother will make you to be the most amazing person, or she will break you and you'll become a destroyer. But that's the duality. Hopefully you get a chance to choose the best for you. Please educate yourself on the different types of Jewish people in the world. Please read the posts at the bottom, which is basically that last. And so I'm so tired of the racist people on my friends list passing around fucked up information to the world because they want to destroy people. Extremely, extremely hateful, ignorant people are in this world, and they will destroy someone if given the chance. That's what their parents taught them, and that's the kind of people they hang around with. And they choose not to evolve, and they are deteriorating. That's why we don't want cancer in the future, because when people are falling apart and things become that bad for them, they have become radicalized. They destroy everyone around them, especially if you let them. That's the nature of disease. Misery loves company. Why do we have so many different religions in this world which have so many different or so many similar characteristics? They were either driven from their land because someone wanted to destroy them and genocide them, and you know very well that happens. It even happens today. If it happened today, it happened 6,000 years ago. Or there was a disagreement, a major disagreement. Once people have disagreements, they split up into their own factions, and then people are forced to take a side. Just like if you have a fight in your family and people take sides, or like, oh, I take up for the mom or I take up for the son, and they have their own religion around it, and they start fighting each other, and they start passing shit all over Facebook saying, oh God, it's their fault. No, it's their fault. And here's my side of the story, and here's my side of the story, and this is what happened, and it's all hearsay, right? And the people just develop their own storylines, each demonizing the other, and those stories get passed down from generation to generation. Simple arguments turn into world wars years in the future. Now look at all the Christianity offshoots. I can't even count how many different Christian interpretations there are out there in the world. I can't even count how many different versions of the Bible out there in the world, even Judaism. When people have a difference, they're taught hate at home. They will go and destroy other people in body, mind, and spirit. They become the destroyers of humanity. They become soldiers for their ancestors, destroying anything that conflicts with their ancestors, and they don't give anyone a choice. They just genocide, and then it becomes endless wars. We are in those times. We are fighting our parents' battles, no different than your families today, no different than what's going on in your body biologically. You're fighting your ancestors' battle until you win and stay alive. Your children will be fighting your battles, and your children's children will be fighting your battles until that genetic line lives on or is silenced forever. Not only am I fighting my own ancestors' battle in my biological immune system, but I'm also fighting my parents, my adopted parents' battles. I am seeing through the eyes of their ancestors. Remember, I actually sat in the shoes of what they were feeling like when I was in the J world. Everyone's hating me for even thinking about immortality or activating the immune system. And I had so much hate mail. I had so many articles written about me, so many YouTubers that just couldn't wait to just hang me out to dry. So many journalists that wanted to hang me out to dry. And so many followers that couldn't wait to go and skewer someone in public, couldn't wait to skin them alive in public. And those are the groups out there that aim to destroy someone who is different than them. And they are proud of it, and they will tell you they're proud of destroying another fucking human. They will be they are the ones that would given the chance, do what they did way back in antiquity. Remember, if you are in the West, you are being given a choice. Nobody is going into your house. Nobody is making you do anything you haven't already done to yourself and your children. Today you have a choice. And if you're reading this right now, you have a choice. Okay? And that's why I did that reel of the ancient Egyptians. And I said, read Advanced Civilizations Must Develop Stories Around Why We Are and Why We Live On. Is love the lie we tell ourselves so we don't go extinct? That was actually a quote from Orange is the New Black. Is love the lie we tell ourselves so we don't go extinct? Oh, I love you. Oh, I love you. But people do go extinct because they die and reproduce. And they don't change. And then, oh yeah, they said African and Chinese are actually very closely related. That's all I'm going to say on that one. You can read that. Oh yeah, Inanna, the queen and goddess, she was the ancient Sumer of Iraq of today, is the oldest recorded myth in Western civilization, carved on clay tablet with the first known alphabet in the West. The rich legacy recorded thousands of years before the Bible, the Quran, and the Greek myth has been mostly erased, forgotten, or rejected by modern historical records. And so the Song of Inanna, reclaiming female power. All right, and Inanna, I guess, is the goddess. She's part of the 7 deities of the Sumerian pantheon. And I posted that about the Sumerian gods of Sumer and the music that attached to it. And there's a picture of my husband and his friend and all that. Then there's Palestinians, Philistines. That's what you're seeing right now in the Middle East, is King David fighting Goliath. People are like, oh, isn't the Israelis Goliath? No. It was always the other way around, because now you have the children of Goliath that was defeated by King David who are out for revenge. And those stories get passed down from generation to generation. And that's why Israel's armed to the teeth. That's why people, like women, have to be armed to the teeth. Because some men just take. And some women just take. Okay? That's why people have to be armed to the teeth, because of the destroyers around them that just take because they feel entitled. Because they feel like they're stronger, they're better, or whatever. All right? This is when I figure out the giants. You need to ask yourself what happened before the Bible was written. Okay? History is written by the winners. Stay alive and write history. It doesn't matter if you thought you won or if you're here, you won. If you are here and you have a chance to redirect and given a chance to learn something, to advance yourself, you fucking won. Oh, but no, people keep wanting to adopt being a loser and blaming someone for their life. Okay, I'm alive. I thank God and myself and whatever that I'm alive. Who am I to blame for my life? Nobody. I'm responsible for my life. Finally, when I'm given the chance, I'm not that programmed to die. But some people have been programmed to die, and that self-destruct button is so right there at the surface. And others aren't. But if you can't evolve and you're that far behind the 8 ball, yeah, you're not going to see the choices. When you're that under the influence, that damaged from so many years, some people don't have the choice. I get it. And so, history was written by the winners. Stay alive and write history. You can see who the players are by observing people and the cultures today. Balance. I really get it. I so get it. I can't even say it. I can't even spell it out. It's not that I can't spell it out. The system won't let me. Not everybody is supposed to get it. Because even if you say it, it could make things worse. Not that it's already worse, because it is. People aren't stupid, and sometimes people are. When you realize it wasn't that long ago when the giants did rule the earth, and they were like us, quarreling amongst each other. You read all the fairy tales, cannibalizing humans like cattle, enslaving humans. Now you're seeing where I'm realizing the giants. What's going on here? Now you're seeing the next awakening process in my thought process, okay? So the thesis is, did the Ashkenazi Jews, who were one of the first slaves of Egypt during the cradle of civilization, go north to strategize human survival? No different than the black slaves during the 1800s going north to the Underground Railroad, the North Star, up north to Ohio, to New York. Okay? And then over time, Ashkenazi phenotypical characteristics adapted to the Northern European environment, plus the blonde hair, blue eyes were prevalent in the Northeastern Europe. Red hair was found in the Middle East, and people have scattered all over the globe. Did the ones that like their enslavement, stay south mixing with all the dark-skinned inhabitants native at the time? And there was black pharaohs too, okay? Or stay enslaved? Stockholm Syndrome? Do they fall in love with their captors? Go north and be free? Seems to be the common theme, right? By the way, even the Philistines, or /Palestine, was not the original inhabitants of Jerusalem. Scholarly consensus. Most scholars agree that the Philistines were of the Greek origin, and they came from Crete and the rest of the Aegean Islands, or more generally from the area of modern-day Greece. Judaism is not only an ethnicity. It is a shared experience of an identity of questioning, looking deeper, and evolving. Questions people have. So I took this from Quora or Reddit, one of those. So I just found out that there is such thing as a blonde-haired, blue-eyed ethnic Jew. But how? Were they blonde and blue-eyed in Moses' time? I don't understand. I thought blonde hair, blue eyes was Anglo-Saxon. Ethnicity is not about genetics. Ethnicity is about shared community, shared history, and identity. A person who converts to Judaism is 100% a Jew, and Jewish is an ethnicity. Yes, largely being Jewish is a genetic, but it is not and was really never 100% genes. You are correct to think that the original tribal genetically related ethnicity of the Jews was Middle Eastern, and the Middle Easterners are not typically blonde hair and blue eyed. However, Middle Easterners, even way back then, could be red-headed and gray-eyed, and a blonde and blue-eyed person might have been really rare, but wouldn't be completely unheard of. And when you're capturing someone like in a war, and you have POWs, right, prisoners of war, and they could be blonde-haired, blue-eyed, and then they go and procreate with somebody, and then you have now the variation in that population. But they was over 2,000 years ago, remember, and the Jews have been scattered literally all over the world since that time. And ethnicity is open to now genetic contribution. Any ethnicity is, and Judaism definitely is open, allowing conversion and intermarriage at certain times and places. Okay? The modern Jewish genetic identity certainly has a strong average connection to the Middle Eastern, Levant, Lebanon, Israel, Jordan, but has significant contributions from most of the other places where Jews have lived for any length of time. Plus, a convert to Judaism, no matter what their genes is, in our view, 100% Jewish and totally ethnic. If the Jews didn't have to worry about people genociding them, they wouldn't have to defend themselves. Jealousy always made people aggressively homicidal and even genocidal to some cultures. Remember, my world, you saw how hard people wanted to silence me. You saw how hard they wanted to take me off of Facebook. They saw how hard they wanted the government to silence me. Can you imagine if they were back in antiquity? They would have destroyed me. They would have put me up there in the gallows. They would have nailed me to the fucking cross. They would have nailed me to the cross. Okay? And so I totally understand now where the Jews are coming from. I experience what it's like to be hated by everybody in the fucking world. Like everybody. Jealousy always made people aggressively homicidal and even genocidal to some cultures. If you don't take the time to understand and you pass down ignorance to your children, why is it somebody else's fault? And you realize people taking antibiotics are not just the Christians and Gentiles. Even many Jewish people take so many antibiotics and surgeries and prescription drugs. To hate any Jewish person is ignorant. So the Rosicrucian is about evolution, and the Jewish mystics are part of that conglomerate. Just like the Christian Gnostics, Hermetics. Stop being so racist. And stop blaming just one culture, religions, or ethnicity. Like, seriously, stop totally freaking juvenile. The war in the Middle East is just one very small piece of the pie, and it's not something you should take sides on. People have to fight it out. I had to fight it out. I had to go through the court system and learn my lessons there. I had to go through Facebook and YouTube and be, faced with community standards and go through all the activism and finally relinquish myself from people who were holding me back, and I was holding them back. And so people have to fight it out. Sometimes you're forced to fight, especially when you've been backed into a corner, or when enough is enough. Because why should anyone be heavily armed if it wasn't for somebody else with the intention to destroy? Women understand this. We had to endure predatory males for years. Okay? We're in some hard lessons, I'm telling you. That's why I had to take a few days off, because it's been some pretty heavy shit going on in my mind. And trying to put it all together, because I tell you, I studied so fanatically the last 7 years, everything. I had to. And you couldn't stop at just politics or religion or science. You had to go through the conspiracy world, the giants world, the Tartarian world, and then HARP and CERN and Wi-Fi and pandemics, and all the history and the wars and prehistory and prehistoric. I mean, you could not leave any stone unturned. You could not just be so compartmentalized. You had to study everything to understand how it all connected. That's why those that take a side and those that just repeat the same mantra over and over again, you realize you sound like a broken record. It doesn't take just understanding just one little tiny. You have to understand the bigger picture. What is that? That's studying biology, physics, chemistry, understanding people's intentions and purposes, understanding everything, even the things that conflict with your belief system. You have to understand it and even offer a similar argument to show that you didn't have to take a side. You don't, just because you believe that there should be death and to balance doesn't mean that you should die, or that you should be saying someone else should die. That's why the system is doing what it's doing as far as the climate change. So that way we don't have people genociding people and saying, well, you should live and you should die. If you cannot adapt, like the humans did way back when they completely eradicated the giants, and then they had to bioengineer and biologically whittle down humans to be down to up to maybe 8 or 9 feet tall, if that's the highest, because you have basketball players down to 4'11", 3'11", 2, I mean, down to the most smallest person. If we had to whittle humanity down to that size, that means that they had to go through so many different climate changes and bioengineering. And you're in a climate change right now. Do you not realize that? Which means that if you're trying to be hot and cute and Olympian and strong and brawny and wealthy or be so brainy that you forget everything else, because it's all about brains, but your body's going to shit, you're not going to survive this climate change. You're not. That's why we have right now 8 billion people, projected 12.9 billion, because Africa's up and coming. And Africans are so smart over there in Africa. They have the body, they have the brains, they're getting the programming, they're getting the energy, they're getting the food, they're getting all the different therapies to help them stay within a certain cured existence. So they're going to be potentially even living to be 150 years old, okay, just naturally without doing the J world, when you think about it. And so now you have to understand the world that you live in, and you're going to have to really adapt, because you're going to be eradicated if you're all about beauty, brains, and brawn and wealth. Did they learn that the giants were keeping the balance of humans, but did the giants almost wipe out the human race? And so how are humans going to regulate themselves? Who had to be expendable ones? How do you protract and preempt wars to keep the balance of the human race? That's why we're turning to robots and artificial intelligence. Who wants to make those kinds of decisions, right? When you program robots to do the menial labor, and then also program the robots to accelerate or slow down the atmosphere based upon algorithms and intention, then those who can adapt to the atmosphere and the algorithms and the evolution will be the strongest. Because when the atmosphere finally calms down and there's less people on this earth, can you imagine how amazing you can be? I mean, how did the giants get to be so big? Well, they had to come here first from somewhere. I don't know. Because there had to be a first prototype. Where did that prototype come from? Somewhere, who knows where. I couldn't tell you where, and maybe you will know one day. Maybe we'll know one day where the giants came from first. Our creators. I'm not worshiping them. Maybe we'll never know. I couldn't tell you. I couldn't tell you where the hell they came from. But there had to be a prototype. All right? That's why you must understand evolution. Or else your baser level instincts will be the reason why you are expendable. Because you're giving people a reason to destroy you at your hands by your choices and beliefs, your intolerance to food and environment. You know who you are. You're all over Facebook blaming people for how bad the food supply is, but you never looked at why you did or what you did around disease. You had 7 years around my information to figure it out, but you gave into the fear. You allowed the system to control your decisions. You allowed the system to make you afraid of my information. Everybody in the West, even in third world countries, are being given a choice. Your intolerance to whatever is sealing, like CEI or SEA, lean your fate. Blaming a person, place, or thing, or whatever, for whatever, or looking for a Messiah might be sealing your fate. What if you had the Messiah within you? What if you could save yourself without dying someday? The world has taken a drastically different turn. Find the Messiah within you. I found the Messiah within me. You'll find the Messiah within you, or you'll find a destroyer within you. It's your choice, because you can destroy yourself. People do. They're taking their antibiotics all over the place. It's a lot. So I'm looking at my wall right now, and I'm trying to think how my wall, I don't know. I would start from over here to go over here to build a timeline to develop my next book. But I have to have the main subject headings of the timeline, and I have to have then the supporting subheadings, and it has to go in some kind of chronology, because everything is chronological. You happen to know only a very small space in the time-space continuum, okay? And so now it's understand what happened even before the Bible, and that's why I post about the Star Wars and even Star Trek, but Star Wars, because and Anakin, right? Anakin, who was Luke Skywalker, I guess. I didn't watch all those series before. But I'm just assuming. I could be wrong around that. But was Anakin a little baby Skywalker and then he grew up to be Skywalker? Who knows? But anyways, you can tell me if that's true or not. But Anakim was one of the giants in the days of antiquity. Okay, and then you had Joshua, and that's why I was trying to bring in all the Hebrews and the whole Yeshua, Joshua, and then that's their Jesus. And then Joshua, then there's Jesse, and then there's Jesse, and there's Saul, King Saul. And I'm thinking like, oh wait, Better Call Saul, Jesse Pinkman. There's some kind of biblical reference even in some of these Netflix series. I'm like, okay, it's all connected. Okay, guys, that's why when I watched so many movies. That's all I did when I was PMSing, was I watched movies every time I would sit and just be miserable in my PMS. So back then, like JFK, before he became president, he was sick all the time. So what did he do? He read books. He sat in his bed while everyone else was playing football and hanging out in Hyannisport and over there in Martha's Vineyard or whatever. He was reading. So what was I doing? Everybody was going drinking and doing whatever and partying. I was sitting at home eating so much food, getting bloated, and watching endless amounts of movies. Movie after movie, watching them all different types. Because what was I going to do? I'm not going to go to a bar. I didn't have any money to really do anything because I was poor. And so I sit and watch movies. That's how I figured out how everything is connected. And everything is biblical, connected, telling you the past, the present, and the future. If you only just opened your eyes. So no matter what happens and no matter what is going on, are you evolving? If you're not evolving and you're circling within the same arguments but different scenarios, it doesn't matter the answer to your questions. You will not be around long enough to understand why the things are going the way they're going. You haven't even saved yourself. But you think you have some kind of say to what happens in somebody else 7,000 miles away. I stand with this, I stand with that. No, you stand for yourself and your beliefs. You let them fight it out. They will fight it out over there. And there will be a winner, whoever it is, and it's all relative to whatever perception. But there will be a winner. If you want to speak up for somebody, speak up for the damage you've done to your body with your herbs and surgeries and extracts. If no one's going into your house, stay out of somebody else's war. If you get pulled into something and they conscript everybody, right? Then you have a leg to stand on. So right now we have people who are reserves, that are living in other countries, and they're going to war in Israel. They have actually left their homes and gone to war. They're not conscripting. They're calling people up. People are voluntarily going into Israel. Okay, fine. That's their choice. Okay? But you as Americans, the last time there was a draft was the Vietnam War. But there has not been a draft since then. Every single time we go to war, it's been voluntarily. But why was it voluntarily? Because something aggressive happened. 9/11, the Hamas thing. Sometimes it takes events to get people to take us to the next level. And we honor the people who die for their country. We thank them for their service. But we're not forcing people to go. People are voluntarily going for whatever reason. Okay? And they're trying to pave the way for the future. Just like my parents, they did what they had to do to develop me. And they'll be sacrificed because I can't imagine them doing the world that I'm doing. It's very painful. And they may not even survive what I'm doing. But they gave their life for this information. Okay, so honor my parents. They developed this. They gave you the platform of potential immortality. So if you're not being conscripted into war, aren't you privileged enough to have an opinion about somebody else's situation? You gotta save yourself. And I said again, before you can forge into the future, everything in the past must finally be complete. Every loose end must be tied up. And it is about tying up loose ends. And that's what I'm doing right now as I'm going through this process. I am tying up all the loose ends because I studied and wrote. I'll tell you, I wrote so much about the Greek mythology. I wrote so much about the Rosicrucians. I wrote so much about the Freemasons. I wrote so much about the Georgia Guidestones. I wrote so much about Universe 25. I wrote so much about the protons and neutrons, electrons, and physics, and the universe, like out there in the solar systems, even learned all the physics not all of them, learned about the physics formulas, the biology, even math and English, statistics, a lot of the formulas in math, understanding the numbers and the integers, and then also language and the parts of speech and the parts of the human body and the parts of the blood types, and then all the different conspiracy worlds. I mean, it was self-study. It was, what I did was way more than what any college institution would offer to someone without you paying zillions of dollars and endless time. I mean, this shit that I've been doing the last 7 years is priceless. There is no institution that would give you the information that I did for myself. But I developed the time to do it. I developed the infrastructure for me to do this. And so that's what it takes. And sometimes you don't even know why you study what you study. You study it because eventually it'll make sense in the future. But right now what you study may not make sense to you until you can put it all fucking together, until you can put it all together and connect the dots. And people will laugh at you for it. They're like, why are you studying this? Why are you studying this? Oh my God, it's not true. Oh my God, you're stupid. Oh, I'll tell you, you'll go through people telling you you're stupid. Oh, people have told me I was stupid. So many times they've laughed at me. They've said, and you still say, screw you. I'm doing this for myself, not for you. And you take time for yourself. You're not doing this for other people. You're doing this for yourself. But when you do shit for yourself, you do it for humanity, because then you have something to offer to fucking humanity. So before you can forge into the future, everything in the past must finally be faced and complete. Every loose end must be tied up. It's all about tying up loose ends and not blaming somebody. Even if your parents were never there for you and they walked out on you when you were like 5 years old and you have a chip on your shoulder and you want to blame and eventually you're going to figure out how that actually worked to your benefit, if you could even see that as working to your benefit. Yeah, your parents may have been abusive. They may have done this, may have done that. They may have done some horrible things. But guess what? It gave you a platform to work from, to release those demons and build your body back up. And look, you're still alive. And you have the opportunity to redirect. You're alive. It's when people are dead, don't have a leg to stand on. But every single person out there is alive. They have a chance to redirect if they are willing to open themselves up for new information and finally face the past. Everything in the past must finally be complete. So then I had to bring in about Imhotep. Imhotep was the first physician. He was the chancellor to Djoser, which is one of the pharaohs of Egypt. And Imhotep died before he was 20. And he was the first physician, architect, engineer. Okay? And so if I'm going to evolve Imhotep's practice of surgery and remedies, my information is the evolution. In my opinion, it is a true physical immortality on this earth. Okay, that's what immortality is to me, is true physical immortality on this earth, because you don't really know where you're going to go when you physically die. People say your soul goes back to the universe, dying to inhabit a new body. You just hope you don't end up a slave to somebody else again. Imagine you coming back as a dog to some brutal owner who just ties you up in the backyard and makes you sit out there guarding some junkyard. That's like karma when you come back as something that's a slave to somebody else. That's why you don't want to die, because you'll never know how you're going to end up coming back. And you could be starting all over again, defending yourself against a larger virus in the world. And so what I am advocating around physical immortality is completely aligned with forging into the future, acknowledging the past. But it takes very evolutionary species to exemplify this, or else you will always be fighting to defend yourself against someone who intends to destroy you. And you know very well some people hunt humans. Those are the ones that completely destroy people's name, destroy their spirit, and they talk so disparagingly about another person, a specific person, and even a whole race of people, or a specific political thought process or belief system. Remember, we're just releasing the demons out of our body. We're facing the past, releasing the demons, and we walk away from intolerance, and we don't try to force convert people at all. We stay off other people's Facebooks if we don't agree with them. And that's one of the main things you realize is that you're willing to understand both sides of the story and articulate it, and you stay off of someone else's Facebook who thinks differently. And I'll tell you, it's a hard urge to control when you want to convert somebody into your line of thought. You feel like you have to troll them. Sometimes you must destroy the destroyers to save the world. How do you do that? Well, you give them so many chances. And if they don't have an infrastructure, well, see, there's got to be ways. Everybody has a war. Everyone who's intolerant will be dealing with a war where they're going to either have to survive it or die from it. Everyone right now who is intolerant in body, mind, and spirit, in politics, religion, and science, has a war that has been purposely developed for them and their culture. Now you have to survive it. Sometimes you must destroy the destroyers to save the world. Intolerance is spoken, intolerance is practiced. The third world people speaks intolerance gets destroyed. The first world who cannot tolerate themselves or the environment destroys themselves, and they destroy their own family through the antibiotics, through the surgeries, through their absolution in politics, religion, and science. Everyone's being given a choice. Now we all are accountable for the choice we have made personally. I am freeing myself from bondage. I freed myself from bondage because even resisting the past of slavery. And my mother was the biggest thing in my past I had to deal with. God. So regardless of who was anywhere first, survival of the fittest, and the most tolerant, and the most evolutionary, and the most sustainable. And then this is where I figure out the Tartarian stuff. Okay. Now we're getting to some interesting stuff because, we know World War II, and then we know that what happened with Stalin and Stalin, and what happened to the Romanovs, what the Romanovs did probably to the pogroms against the Jews in Ukraine and different Eastern European countries. And then we have Tartaria, and then we have the Mongols and Genghis Khan. I remember even exploring that because someone sent me to go to a group to go and discover the mudfloods and Tartaria and all of those worlds, and then the orphan trains, and then all the direct energy, with the churches, with those crystals that are inside the nodes of the churches, and then using the beams, okay, the beams from the light from those crystals that then would land directly on a specific area, of which then people would be suffering from cancer, disease, and chronic illness, and autoimmune disorders, and even rapidly aging. And so you can only imagine it's when there's a town, like they said on one of those YouTube videos, there's a painting where there was nobody in that town, like nobody. It wasn't even a painting, I think it was a photograph. It was a photograph of a town where nobody was in it. It was just empty. So can you imagine that, a direct energy weapon that completely decimates and just causes everyone to die suddenly, decimates a whole town. Those who did it will come in, take the bodies away, and go disappear somewhere else, right? They take a picture of the town as evidence of what they've done. And then they bring in the orphan trains and people from other places to go and inhabit that town and take over where those who were decimated left off. And you would never know. You would never know who used to be there. Okay? That's why I'm saying we're in some interesting, just some crazy ass shit going on. I'm telling you, where's the Ark of the Covenant? Oh my God. What if the Russian Tartarian Empire were the ones who enslaved humanity? And so the humans who wanted to save humanity destroyed the evil giants. And there might have been a race of giants who also set the Israelites free. And then the ancestors of the Tartarian giants wanted to destroy those who set the slaves free. Like the children, right? Your offspring, the demigods. Because they sympathized with their parents, the mean giants. This reads like a childhood fairy tale story. And maybe that's why they were trying to destroy the Jews in Eastern Europe, because they came from descendants of those who took out the giants, those who enslaved them. Maybe that's why Russia is trying to destroy the Ukraine to get back at what happened many years ago because of the ancestors. Maybe that's why the giants don't exist anymore, because nobody could agree to stop enslaving humans. And so then all the giants had to be eradicated because they were wielding their power because of their size. But it was the giants' children that also had to be tamed. Maybe that's why so much gene editing too, to breed out violence and intolerance and develop a more advanced human race. But that also you have to see the violence and intolerance so you know what we're breeding out and why we're going a different direction, because you can't live in a society where you have to keep protecting yourself from a male or a female trying to destroy you because you look different. And then the Great Tartarian Empire. It's worth the read, right? All right. And so this is where I figured out when I was watching even Indiana the Tombs, or Indiana and the Raiders of the Lost Ark, Indiana the Temple of Doom, and even other stories. Or what was it, Stargate? Where they opened up, remember that in Stargate? Yeah, Stargate. And they opened up, they were in that big, huge Egyptian pyramid tomb, and they opened up and it was just light that came out. But you didn't see what it was, but it was light. It's a nuclear reactor. Okay? So that thing that I wrote, the Tartarian Empire, is worth the read. I'm not saying I agree with how this author characterized the situation. People demonize what they don't understand, because there are probably reasons why things happened the way they happened, if that's even so. We weren't there. So all history is written by the winners. Every single one of us is a winner, and we have our own version of it. And in my opinion, I do not doubt for a second there were giants of the past genocided for a reason. Okay, can you imagine having so many giants like the people in your community who destroy? Can you imagine having giants who hate you? I mean, so many giants who hate you. Your whole race, a human, has no defense against a giant unless they collectively get together. But what about the sympathizers of those giants who worked for the giants, enslaving other humans? Just like the minions of people who work for their friends and will hate you because their friends, the giants, hate you. What we see today, violence, intolerance, racism, and other violent tactics also happened 2,000 to 6,000 to 10,000, 12,000 years ago. I don't doubt the Ark of the Covenant is a direct energy weapon. I don't doubt that for a second. I don't doubt that what's going on today also happened way back when it came to reconfiguring the empires. There's a reason why they kept all our history hidden from us. How do you explain destroying the destroyers? How do you even give people a story who weren't even there? That's why we have movies. That's why we have reality shows. That's why you have Facebook. Now you can see why people had to destroy people way back when, because they were destroying people and attacking them using slavery on them. The history of the world, the real history of the world, has to come out slowly, and it must come out simultaneously with humans reenacting what their ancestors have done. What if their ancestors have defended what their ancestors have defended? So now you're seeing with even the slavery and even the belief systems and the intolerance, you're seeing what the giants have done to their offspring and what was passed down. Okay, I had somebody on Facebook say, hey, you're Chinese, go back to wherever you came from. Because I had a question about whether or not we should have Halloween or have people knocking on people's doors, having teenagers dress up in costumes and knock on doors. And I said, well, I wouldn't feel comfortable now to open up a door to a stranger, somebody in costume. I wouldn't. And they're like, well, go back to China. Okay? That's what we have in our population, where somebody tells me to go back to China. I'm like, I'm not even Chinese. And that was pretty racist. But if they're saying that on Facebook, in public, for someone like me to go back to China, can you only imagine what goes on in that household and what those children are being taught? I blocked the person, and I'm sure the moderator deleted that comment. But when people are that vocal about how racist, because someone says, hey, I don't think that, why can't these kids go and do something different besides eating candy? Besides going to strangers' houses they don't even know, dressed up in costumes, and be so fanatical about collecting candy from strangers. When you've been told, hey, don't take candy from strangers, when somebody's like in a white van over there on the side of the street, and you're telling your kids, well, don't take a candy from a stranger. Don't pet a puppy from a stranger, because they could kidnap you. Or they could poison your candy. And we're advocating this, we're advocating, and I'm just like, why can't these kids go to like a boys and girls club and play basketball or do whatever, or build a shed, or do something more constructive with their time? Because the questions were asked, should teenagers be allowed to go trick-or-treating? I'm like, why can't they go and build a shed, or go paint a mural, or go write a book or something? Why do they have to go to strangers' houses and go collect candy? And so when someone said that, oh, go back to flipping China, because that's what we do, and all. Now you see why we're in a great reset. Now you see what generations of cultures have done. They have caused intolerance. They can't handle new information. They can't consider an alternative thought process. So you're seeing the evidence all over Facebook. You're seeing it. I'm glad people are showing their true colors all over Facebook. You had to see it. You have to see it. When I deal with people today on Facebook, just offering a different perspective, I could understand why societies of the past had to eradicate certain types of people who would destroy and cause human extinction if given the opportunity. And so what I meant, it wasn't very clear there, is that when I offer a different perspective and I get such caustic, racist, intolerant responses, yeah, you can't get mad at what's going on. You really can't. You really can't, because that's what parents have taught their children. To bully, to be racist, to be intolerant, to be completely destroyers of their community. I'll tell you, intolerance right now is at an all-time high. People are not afraid to go there on Facebook, and that should tell you everything. And we all need to see it, so you understand why your government is doing what it has to do. They have to babysit people. Maybe that's why you don't know much about the Tartarian Empire, because maybe the giants, were the destroyers of humanity, and they tortured humanity. And some of them were so weak that they couldn't handle the climate change. They couldn't handle the petrified flash of energy that turned everyone into stone. Okay? And that's why the conspiracy of the Tartarian Empire seems to be more of a right-wing philosophy area, because maybe they are the ancestors of those people. Nothing in the world surprises me. Nothing surprises me at all. Since I wasn't there back then, I can only observe humans today. And they are no different. Humans are no different today than they were back then. You just didn't appear out of nowhere. You came from a long line of people of ancestors and beliefs and religions, constantly dying and reproducing over and over and over and over again, regurgitating and even adding more emphasis to the stories of the past. You are humans of the past. You are the people of the past, and many people are showing their intolerance. You came from a long line of people who fought so many wars, and many of your ancestors tortured people and genocided people, and many of you are reenacting their values right now, even spiritually, all over Facebook. Welcome to history. You are living history. If people weren't violent and they were calm and they could evolve, we wouldn't have any wars. But there's a reason why we are where we are. We are entering into a new world. I hope you survive. Anyone who's left in the future will never ever see this time again. The system will make sure of it, because we cannot repeat the last 6,000 years. It's too fucking painful. Okay? It really is. And so, when you think about it, when people die around you, there's going to be so much death around you for so many different reasons. All right? You will get desensitized to it, and you won't be able to cry anymore. You won't, because now it's just going to be what's going to have to happen because of so many things. I've accepted that this is going to be the future. So much death, whether it's close to me, a few, degrees away from me. And I just have to keep pounding the gavel that you have a chance now. You don't have to end up like your ancestors 12,000 years ago, or even 5 years ago, when someone dies from cancer, disease, and chronic illness. You don't have to end up like them. And so this is where I got kind of like, I don't know. I will purposely challenge myself and take something like the North Star, and I'll look at all where it came from, the derivation, the different names, and I'll look at history and see the patterns. And so I was looking at the configuration of where Egypt and Jordan is, where Egypt is, and where the slaves from Egypt, the Israelites and all that, and all the different people from going up into Canaan, going up to Jerusalem. And so they're going north, right? Okay. And so then you think about those in the south that were enslaved by the southern people, that were enslaved in the black people were enslaved by the southern folk in those plantations. And they were using the Underground Railroad going north to the North Star. Okay? And so the children of slaves will always find their way home. Go north, Israelites, and those of the Underground Railroad and slaves of the world, go north. You are the motherland. Don't let your children destroy you. Remind them you deserve to live too. And that's even parents today with children who are destroying their own parents. That's even parents today. But they won't look at that. They'll look at it as love and whatever. And that's how the system is able to destroy the family, is when they tell the parents they must be destroyed by their own children. The North Star. The star's location close to the celestial North Pole eventually became useful to navigation. At night in the northern hemisphere, if you can see Polaris, you can always tell which way is north, and by extension, which ways are south, east, and west. Okay? Polaris is a star in the northern circumpolar constellation of Ursa Minor. It is designated a Ursa Minoris and commonly called the North Star of the Pole Star, with an apparent magnitude that fluctuates around 1.98. It is the brightest star in the constellation and is readily visible to the naked eye at night. Okay. So one version of the Ursa Major represents Callisto, who had a child with Zeus, king of the Greek gods. When Zeus' wife Hera found out, she turned Callisto into a bear. Then one day, Callisto's son was out hunting and saw a great bear. Not realizing it was his mother, to save them both, Zeus threw them into the sky. So he basically destroyed his son and destroyed his lover, so that way they couldn't find out about each other. What, he could have just redirected, but no, he threw them both into the sky, into the heavens, right? So the moral of the story, we were once immortal. Our mother was immortal. But some jealous goddess, right, like Hera, turned us into animals. And we have forgotten our ancestors. We became slaves. And then we were thrown into the sky when we weren't useful to save us. Right? We weren't useful to save us from the jealous goddess, Hera. And now we're being set free. Some will go to the universe, go to the heavens. Others will stay on earth. You're being given a choice. You have a choice. We came from a long line of children hunting our mothers, punishing others for the sins of our father. And then everyone goes over the cliff together, thrown into the sky, just like Zeus planned. Did he really save them, or did he get absolution for his crimes? Did Hera try to tell the boy Callisto was his mother? I don't know. Those are left out. We don't know what happened in that whole story. Did Zeus destroy them both so the secret would never come out? Dead men tell no tales. The zoos of Zeus and Hera, and that's right now humanity. So I'm saying, read all the stories. You will see so many similarities and correlation. All right. Now, what did I post here? So it's going to take me 7 years to write this, because there's a lot of information I have to go and research and figure out how to, there's a lot. And so, are Tartarians Greek? That's what I asked Google. Yes, it was the Mongolian Empire of Genghis Khan and his successors. Tartar was a misleading term that came about from being likened to the monsters that dwelt in the Tartarus, a sort of Greek version of hell, right? So the giants that were cannibalizing humans and enslaving them and they were known as the devil. And the devil is also accountability too. But back then, the giants were the devil. And so Grand Tartaria is above India and China and Arabia and Persia. Grand Tartaria, that's like the Russia and Siberia, the endless steppe. There's a book I read a long time ago called The Endless Steppe. Yeah. Tartaria. All right, so the whole David and Goliath story, this is where then you have to look at David and Goliath, and you figure out where the Palestinians came from, potentially Greek, and then even all the way up to the Tartarian, you never know. And so there's a reason why a large swath of history was kept hidden from you. You wouldn't understand until you saw what the children of history did. Watch the children of history today. Look at all the crime and violence, and most of all, intolerance. Would you understand why the giants were eradicated from the past? You had to see the intolerance. You had to see the brutality. You had to see how parents raised their children. You had to see what those children turned into as adults. Then you had to see the religions that were sustained, the intolerance in those religions. Then you'll understand why we are where we are. Then you realize there's nothing to resist or fight out there. If you resist anything, you're fighting your own ancestors and their beliefs. You literally have to reconsider your lifestyle and belief system. If you want to save your own life, I hope your children survive this great reset. Parents, everybody save yourself. And so everybody, like Klaus Schwab said, will be competing on a level playing field. Everyone has been given a chance. Everyone has been given a chance to reconsider their intolerance in body, mind, and spirit, in politics, in religion, and science. Everything goes back to the giants, the Tartarian giants, or even the giants of way back when, those who enslaved humanity and their sympathizers. What is the meaning of Tartarian? Relating to or characteristic of a Tartar, or the Tartars, the Mongolian and Turkish tribes who overran Asia and much of Eastern Europe and in the Middle Ages, okay? And so there's giants even back then, right? And what is the origin of word Tartary? From medieval Latin Tartarus, from Persian Tatar, first used 13th century in reference to the hordes of Genghis Khan, 1202-1227, said to be ultimately from Tata, a name of the Mongols for themselves. Where was Tartary on a map? Tartary, a vast country in the northern part of Asia, bounded by Siberia in the north and west. This is called Great Tartary. The Tartars who lie south of Muscovy and Siberia are, okay. And then Goliath, the Gittites, is the most well-known giant in the Bible. He is described as the champion of the camp of the Philistines, whose height was 6 cubits and a span. Samuel 17:4. From Samuel and Chronicles we have drawn Goliath's pedigree. Okay, so it came from the Gittites. Gath of the Gat was one of the 5 cities of Philistine Pentapolis during the Iron Age. It was located in northern Philistia, close to the border of Judah. Gath is often mentioned in the Hebrew Bible when its existence is confirmed by Egyptian inscriptions. And so you think that giants are all over. Tartary, yes, even in the Middle East, giants were all over the place. But I want you to see that why they don't exist anymore, why they covered that history up. They had to, because humans would not be able to exist under a giant rule. We would be enslaved because they could. They could crack the whip on us. When you had somebody that was larger than you. Can you imagine there's people even in Ohio here who are so large and so huge? Men here are built like brick shit houses. Okay? And the smaller women don't stand a chance against them unless they figure out how to balance out the energy being taken and the energy being retained. Okay? So then you go to somewhere like the coast, let's say like the West Coast, where the men and the women are a little bit smaller because of blood types and diets and even the temperate climate. But you go somewhere like here in Ohio, people are built like brick shit houses. Imagine if they were like 12 feet, 13 feet, 16 feet tall. They could rule over you. When you have a race of giants like that who are like 20 feet tall, they had to be eradicated or you die from them. So that's what I'm saying. So then it's not about brute strength. It's about intellectual capacity. It's about strategy. Okay? That's what made David kick Goliath's ass. I'm not going to read the whole scripture, but David and Goliath. Okay? That's how the giants were eradicated, because we had to, or we die under the giants' rule. And again, imagine if you're married to someone who is so much larger than you that brutalizes you and they won't that keeps you captive. Can you imagine what the humans had to deal with way back when? Oh, I can only imagine. And then you have the Epic of Gilgamesh. Gilgamesh, a giant. And Enki, Sumerian pantheon. Unsurpassed at all things, he was a towering figure, figuratively and literally. He stood more than 5 meters tall, but Gilgamesh wasn't happy. Enkidu, the wild man who became Gilgamesh's closest friend, and according to some, his lover, okay, so I guess he was gay, had died. So Enkidu, which is a derivative from Enki, Sumerian pantheon, right? Gilgamesh's closest friend died, so Gilgamesh began a desperate quest for eternal life. Immortality. Okay? And so Enki, so the Mesopotamians, or what is it? The Sumerian pantheon, the Akkadians, the Assyrians. Okay, so the Akkadians and the Assyrians came to Mesopotamia as foreign invaders. Both empires started because their rulers wanted to control more trade routes. Both Akkad and Assur were inland cities far away from the ports of the Eastern Mediterranean and Persian Gulf. So you figure Gilgamesh was part of that. Okay, so then here we go. He was one of the giants who probably enslaved humanity. That's why the giants were eradicated from the past. And that history was taken out of the Bible until you could see, so Book of Enoch, all right? So you can see why we are where we are. We are the children of the giants. And you can see what values were given to us and forced onto us. You had to look in the mirror. Enkidu's name had been variously interpreted as identical with the deity Enkidu, or Lord, or meaning Lord of the Reed Marsh, or Enki has created in the Epic of Gilgamesh. Enkidu is a wild man created by the god Anu. Remember, so these are probably the 7 deities, right? After Gilgamesh defeats them, the two became friends. In some versions, Enkidu became Gilgamesh's servant. Interesting. Oh my God. Then we have the Ark of the Covenant. Oh God. All right. The Ark of the Covenant most likely was a direct energy weapon. That's why resistance is futile. The earliest slaves of mankind figured out how to win most wars out there, and they let things play out so that we have a history. We can see what children have done when taught by their parents. That's why the giants are gone. That's why the huge trees of life are gone. That's why the Tartarian architecture is gone. Probably wasn't cost effective either, and probably was not energy efficient. That's why huge history is gone, because it was a bad history, a very bad history, and we saw it replay itself over the last thousands of years. But the Ark itself was also said to have incredible capabilities, including allowing direct communication with the divine. Okay, so yeah, I mean, when you release the demons and then you get get all that energy, like the environment accelerated, and you see the orbs and all that stuff, and then you're also seeing the dreams and the colors of your dreams, and you're getting awarenesses, and things are talking to you in your sleep, and you're just, it becomes a whole spiritual experience, right? And so, but the Ark itself was also said to have incredible capabilities, including allowing direct communication with the divine. Fantastical powers were ascribed to it, such as being a super weapon used to protect the Israelites, parting the River Jordan, and taking down Jericho city walls. To this day, it's complete mystery as to what the nature of the object really was. Well, not really. We're figuring out it's a nuclear reactor. World mystery researchers have speculated it may have been a nuclear-powered device, an advanced superweapon, or possibly an extraterrestrial Stargate. Okay. As many researchers suggest, there's evidence tracing its origins to the ancient Egyptians and their pantheon of so-called sky gods. Then you have Luke Skywalker, right? And then you have the whole Star Wars, and even Star Trek, I guess. Okay. Now it all makes sense. The mud floods did cover Tartaria and the giants of the 200 years ago and more. There was a reason. I'm sure the Ark of the Covenant was behind it all. And again, there was a reason for it. Okay? And there's a reason why some towns were completely devoid of people and all people were gone. Where did they go? I'm sure you can guess. And then the orphan trains came in and redeveloped society. And so then what happens is there's always a reason why we had to keep starting over again. When you don't get it right, you have to keep starting over again until you get it right. Okay? And so, yeah. And so I said, yes, the lasers cut down the trees of life and sliced stone and large stones, and the giants picked them up and built walls and cities. Yep, the Ark of the Covenant, it was nuclear energy, direct energy weapons, and people still today deny their existence. That's why you don't understand history. That's why you've been so blinded by your parents, because they didn't believe anything. They refused to consider all information. Human history is so extraordinary if you just open your eyes and read information and stop resisting somebody else's ideas because it came from history. When you destroy evolution and you destroy information new to you, you fucked yourself. My information is not new. It's just new to you because your ancestors shielded you and blinded you from all the truths. It's not my fault. I have studied physics, chemistry, and history, and religion, and biology, and I took the time. Okay? You gotta take the time. And so then, which makes sense why gold was used to encase the Ark of the Covenant. It lessened the radioactive potential, and you could carry the nuclear reactor from different places because the carrier had to wear protective clothing. All right? And yeah, so Raiders of the Lost Ark, I watched that yesterday. And then a 4,000-year-old rock was seemingly cut with a laser. Was it aliens? No, they just had the fucking energy from that. Does it matter where the Ark of the Covenant came from? Star Wars, Stargate, all about energy harnessing, developing technology, and redeveloping worlds, direct energy weapons, and lasers. You are living history right now. 4,000 years ago was the days of Gilgamesh. And then there was the giant tree. Remember that Devil's Tower? Why they call it the Devil's Tower? I'm gonna say Tartary, but it could be other areas like in the Philistines area. But why they call it the Devil's Tower? The giants were known as the devils, the giants of Tartaria and all over the world. And what did mankind do? They took the Ark of the Covenant and destroyed the giant world because it was not the world of man; it was the world of giants. So why am I picking on the Tartarian giants? Because there's other giants too. Well, they've covered up the Tartarian architecture, Tartarian history. They covered up so much. Why do they cover it up? Maybe they were the real aggressors. Maybe they were the aggressive aggressors. Maybe that's why Russia doesn't like Ukraine. I mean, who knows? Okay? But there's a reason why all these world wars, there's a reason why so many religions exist. There's a reason why people have such intolerance for each other, because it's passed down. There's a reason why I was adopted. I have probably some blood of Genghis Khan somewhere in me, and that had to be brought out through all the different types of bioengineering and programming and behavioral engineering and whatever. And so then that part of my history of Genghis Khan, because he did a lot of women and he made a lot of babies, okay? Because he raped and pillaged so many people from the past. And I'm just a descendant of the past. All right? I couldn't tell you, I didn't do 23andMe, but Vietnam was inhabited by Chinese, by the French, by even, you know, by so, just we are a conglomeration of so many cultures and genetics, okay? And so the Devil's Tower, I can probably assure you, even some of the mountains out there and some of the monuments out there were trees, and they were petrified, and they were petrified from a nuclear blast of sorts. And so then it shows, you know, now do you get it? I have the post from Israel, the land of milk and honey, stunning Jerusalem, the city of King David. Now do you get it? David defeated the giants ruling the world. Now we have to deal with the children of the giants. They seek to destroy the people who killed their parents, but their parents were destructive and they enslaved mankind. And then I also posted about the Nubians, the black pharaohs. And there were African giants that were also probably different pharaohs of the past enslaving humans. Okay? And then the list of Mesopotamian deities. Here we go. The number 7 comes up again. The giant Anunnaki. The number 7 was extremely important in ancient Mesopotamian cosmology. In Sumerian religion, the most powerful and important deities in the pantheon were sometimes called the 7 gods who decree An, Enlil, Enki, Ninhursag, Nana, Utu, and Anana. And I had those posted on my wall at some point. Okay? And you can Google what those were and all that stuff. And then something happened to men 7,000 years ago, and we finally know why. Around 7,000 years ago, all the way back to the Neolithic, something really peculiar happened to human genetic diversity. Over the next 2,000 years, and seen across Africa, Europe, Asia, the genetic diversity of the Y chromosome collapsed, becoming as though they were only one man to every 17 women. That's why they're saying women are going to rule the world. Because now with this climate change, the men are going to start collapsing. All right. And that's right. And I get it. So now I was watching somebody on my Facebook who happens to be a Hebrew or someone who's like from Yeshua or Yah or something. And they're like, you know, if you follow the Jews or the Christians or the Muslims or whatever, then you're saying, they're saying that's not right or something. It's bad. And I'm like, oh. So I said, I get it. So I went and looked at his background, and he's in the Yah world, and most people that came to the J world were the Hebrew Yah people who believe in Yeshua, Joshua versus Jesus, or any of the Jewish stuff, right? So I get it. Hebrew is for Jesus, because I'm thinking like there's Jews for Jesus, which came out in the 1970s, and then there's Hebrews for Jesus or Yeshua, Joshua, or Yahweh. They said that Yeshua was the son of Yahweh. So they have their own like son of God type of thing, right? So I hypothesized from the Lucasfilm, Star Wars was a prequel to Genesis. According to the Old Testament, the Anakim lived in the southern part of the land of Canaan near Hebron. Genesis states that they inhabited the region later known as Edom and Moab in the days of Abraham. And so Anakim are mentioned in the Bible as descendants of Anak, according to the Old Testament. The Anakim lived in the southern part of the land of Canaan near Hebron, and they inhabited the region known as Edom, and Moab in the days of Abraham. Tall people or giants, Anakim, shown, plural noun, tall people or giants who lived in the southern Palestine and were destroyed or scattered after the arrival of the Hebrews. Okay, so there you go. So that's the whole thing with David and Goliath. Okay, then you see what happened with Star Wars and stuff. And so, oh God, there's so much. Yeshua people, they believe that the Yeshua is a son of Yahweh, and that his life, death, burial, and resurrection provides salvation, which is no different than Jesus Christ, right? Oh, I gotta write this down. Anakim, that's the connection. Let me write this down. Anakim and southern Palestine. Anakim, the giants. Anakim, giants. David and Goliath. And then southern Palestine. Oh, jeez, okay. All right, so Yeshua people. They believe that Yeshua is the son of Yahweh, and that his life, death, burial, and resurrection provides salvation. They believe that after a person repents of their sins, they should be baptized in the name of Yahshua. Jesus' name in Hebrew was Yeshua, which translates to English as Joshua. Okay, what was Joshua in the Bible and what did he do? Joshua also spelled Josu, Hebrew, Yoshua, Yahweh in deliverance. The leaders of the Israel tribes after the death of Moses. Okay, so after Moses died, then somebody else came up who conquered Canaan and distributed its lands to the 12 tribes. His story is told in the Old Testament book of Joshua. And then I'm like the lightsabers, the Ark of the Covenant, Luke Skywalker, Darth Vader, Father and Son, of course the Holy Spirit somewhere, like little Yoda, the Jedi Master. What is the meaning of Sith? Okay, the word of side or Sith has a secondary meaning of peace and refers to the silence of death and the silence of fairy movements. The New Gresham Encyclopedia says mysterious diseases that come in epidemics and afterwards disappear are referred to as the disease of the side or the Sith. So that's the energy that brings up people's stuff. They get all crazy and full of disease and die. And then the pandemic is over. Well, right now, we're not in the Sith. Right now, we're in the turbulence of evolution. Energy. What is Sith in the Bible? An Anglo-Saxon word meaning afterwards, since. The King James Version, English Revised Version, the American Standard Version, since. Okay. But that's the connection to Anakim, and that's the giants. Why the giants were eradicated. Because they were enslaving. Giants eradicated, enslaving humans. And how do you tell a human this who hasn't had really any background and their parents keep on reproducing with their own version of the world and their resistance? And that's why I posted then the giant humans and animals, animal-shaped rock formations, and then, of course, the red desert with the strata that looks like human flesh. And then you have Monument Valley in Utah, and then you had the Devil's Tower. Okay, so let's put it all in perspective. All the gods in Greek mythology were actually the giants who were eradicated by the Ark of the Covenant, plus a prehistoric nuclear blast. Cavemen were the men that were left after the explosions. Why do they live in caves? Because when the system eradicated the giants, the larger giants, and all those huge animals, the ones that needed to be bioengineered by the pantheon were the ones who survived. And that's why you had then all the different types of mankind that even became more evolved as they kept dying and reproducing and being bioengineered, okay, through the V's, through all the different therapies, through so many things. And so the Stone Age basically is 12,000 years ago to 2.5 million. So when they say, this the Paleolithic period, roughly 2.5 million years ago to 10,000 BC, what do you look at first? You look at 2.5 million years ago. You're like, you can't even wrap your mind around it. That's just too far away. But when you think about it, what you can grasp is 12,000 years ago. Okay? So when they say from 12,000 years ago to 2.5 million years ago, well, that's much more, that is more palatable, and that is more accessible than 2.5 million years ago. So even how they word things, even in academia, makes you disconnected from your own ancestors, because you can't possibly relate to someone 2.5 million years ago, but you could potentially relate yourself to someone who is 12,000 years ago old. All the generations, okay? And so the Stone Age, 12,000 years ago to 2.5 million years ago, or 10,000 BC for 12,000 years ago, really. Early humans lived in caves or simple huts or teepees and were hunters and gatherers. They used basic stones and bones, tools, as well as crude stone axes for hunting birds and wild animals. Then you have the gods or the giants, plus the cavemen, okay? In ancient Greek religion and mythology, the 12 Olympians are the major deities of the Greek pantheon, commonly considered to be Zeus, Poseidon, Hera, Demeter, or Demeter, Aphrodite, Athena, Artemis, Apollo, Ares, Hephaestus, Hermes, and either Hestia or Dionysus. Many of the larger giants were eradicated from the nuclear war, but there are still many giants left because many hid in caves. Okay? And so not going to be a nuclear war when you think about it, because that would just destroy mankind. Because if they destroyed, segments of the giant population and even the demigods, the demi-giants, then you can imagine a major nuclear war like back then would basically extinct humanity. So no, it would be a different type of war we're in. It won't be like a crazy nuclear war like, you saw in Nagasaki and Hiroshima. But there will be a different war that's going to be waged, okay? And so many of the larger giants were eradicated from the nuclear war, but there are still many giants left because of many hidden caves. Hiding in a cave will be better than hiding out in the open. The cave will protect you from the flash, blast, and radiation effects from the explosion. Then you can leave before the heavy fallout drops in the area. Then you get the cradle of civilization. Then you get the Bible, right? But before the Bible, you had Star Wars and the lightsabers and ancient nuclear technology. And we knew the oceans covered the desert. Monument Valley, Utah could have been a lush forest or even ocean. The red sands of Utah, the red rocks, the flesh of the giants. Petrified forest. Where does everything derive from? The Old Testament, the Rosicrucian, the Egyptian, Greek mythology, Greco-Roman Empire, the slaves of Egypt, the Middle East, the Ark of the Covenant, climate change, pandemics, the Georgia Guidestones, the Sephardic and the Ashkenazi Jews, the pharaohs, Imhotep, alchemists, spellcasting, the ancestors, children of gods, politics, religion, science, spirituality, bioengineering, and get the Adam and Eve, demigods, war, racism, brutality, intolerance. How do you finally whittle down humanity from being so many meters tall to at least 8 feet or 9 feet tall from the tallest human? The climate change due to higher heat, war, and hard work, the procreation of the race of man, and then the final eradication of the giants. How many Olympians or athletes who can't handle what's going on right now? Just think of all the gods who are strong and fast and swift. Taylor Swift, and that guy Kelsey, whatever, okay? You look at them, they're being thrust out there in the media, watching that whole thing being birthed. Britney Spears is deteriorating, and she's gone, and now we have Taylor Swift, who's this new goddess, and her god, who's a football player, okay? So just think of all the gods who are strong, fast, and swift, like the athletes who are having a hard time with climate change. What's going on right now? The diet suddenly happened even way back when. The Olympians were eradicated by climate change, extreme heat, and high frequencies. Have you heard of the bigger and stronger they are, the harder they fall? That was literal. The most physically strong fell to climate change, and the weakest and the most beautiful fell to climate change. Who was left? Those who could adapt to climate change. And they weren't particularly beautiful. I don't think I'm particularly very pretty. I'm okay looking, but I have to fluctuate because when it gets really aggressive, then my face blows up. I get a big belly. I get big boobs. I have to release the demons later on. It's not pretty going through these fluctuations. So I don't even bank on my body, mind, and spirit looking hot and looking sexual and looking like I'm going to drop a few kids. No, I have to deal with being bloated and fluctuating with the environment. And I'll tell you, it's crazy. If you're so used to somebody being a certain way and they say, okay, I can't be this way for whatever reason, or I have to sleep, or I have to do this, people are like, what the hell? It's because it's called evolution. Okay, when you finally stop resisting evolution, the past, present, and future, worlds open up. Then you think, okay? Right now, it's not about my body and looking sexual and dropping kids or running marathons. It's about working the fucking brain and keeping my body alive to support the brain. That's the whole J-world, guys. Why do you think there were beautiful giant goddesses like Aphrodite who do not exist anymore? Because she's been replicated in Hollywood over and over and over again since the golden age of Hollywood, and of course, even before that. She also couldn't handle climate change. She was bioengineered to be beautiful, just like the strong man, the powerful men out there, bioengineered to be gorgeous and strong and sexually attractive. The Olympians, athletes in our society are also under that engineering. And you see they're not surviving very well during this climate change, regardless of what you blame it on. The smart man, bioengineered to be smart, Albert Einstein, to be a titan within their industry. Everything's about bioengineering, fit for the current climate, fit for the economy. And when the climate changes, the bioengineering breaks down unless you know how to adapt. And many of you are resisting adaptation. You're curing yourself to death because you don't want to change. Because you can't handle change. No different than the gods in the Greeks and the Roman times. No different than the gods of 10,000 years ago. That's why they are all statues all over the Vatican, reminding us where we came from. We're in the times when the Greek gods were falling to climate change. If you think if you think it's all about beauty and wealth and strength and brawn, see you later. It is the day of the smart, strategic, adaptable human race and the most productive and peaceful and tolerant. Everything is about bioengineering. And when you've been given so many gifts, eventually, obviously, those gifts break you down and you die suddenly during the climate change. That's why you're seeing athletes fall in the field. That's why you see beautiful 26-year-old women who weigh next to nothing die suddenly, right in the middle of their career. If you don't get it by now, this is not about short-term goals. This is about living. It's not about living for today. It's about understanding how to balance the past, present, and the future, and still live to tell about it. You're getting a choice no one will ever fucking give you in your world. And most of all, many parents out there will not give this gift to their kids because they don't even know how to have it within them to do it for themselves. But if you're not tied in with beauty, brawn, and even brains, but if you understand that you have to balance everything out and you may have to go through an ugly stage, you can live to tell about it and the world will open up to you. Oh, it's freaking hot. Jesus Christ. Okay? The world will open up to you. And it's not about worshiping anything because the gods thought they were it and they fell to their own egotistical ways. Somebody else outsmarted them. And so if the gods can be outsmarted by somebody else, what makes you think your God's going to save you? What's going on in the Middle East happened 10,000 years ago. There was a war between the tolerant and the intolerant until the system figured out how to breed out the intolerant. They had to change the climate and start all over again, but now with a better information and better data. Okay? And then, Jesus. And so most people haven't even studied Greek mythology and Greek history. They haven't studied all the different pantheons and Western civilization and Eastern civilization, or even understood archaeology and all the different religions. Barely even understood physics and chemistry and biology, except for whatever mainstream media has given to them, or they resisted mainstream media, whichever. And the only things people know nowadays is to resist everything. They just took somebody's argument that sounded good, that fit their narrative, and turned it into an activist dance, and then a religion. But you're making so much money from it, so you don't have any intent or incentive to redirect or else lose your following. Many people are stuck, or they say one thing into another because they can't afford to change their belief system publicly, which means you are a tool for the agenda. Your fear does not give anybody a choice. You barely have a choice. Many people have no one else in the world except for some guru to follow, and even that guru is following another guru, and they still die anyways. Now look at your Facebook. Everybody out there is resisting whatever they have. Everybody out there resisting whatever, even their own evolution, punching air, wasting energy, will eventually die suddenly. Because you have no more resources left to give away to everybody in your world, because you're feeding the parasites in your politics, religion, and science world. My world, you release the parasites and you keep the colonies that keep you alive. You never attack parasites in your body. You feed them and you release them and you don't damage your body in the process. How many of you have attacked your body with remedies and surgeries and energy? That's why your kids are dying suddenly. That's why your friends and family are dying suddenly. Their infrastructure is breaking down. And by the way, Jesus Christ, I don't care if she's a male or female. Gee, why do people, who cares? Who fucking cares? People say that somebody's a male or female in Hollywood. That's so irrelevant and stupid to even focus at whether Taylor Swift is a male or female. Who fucking cares? That's the intolerance. That's the small-mindedness of mankind when they focus on gender of somebody in Hollywood. When that's the only thing they can go to is gender, that shows you why we are in a great reset. When that's the only thing they can say is that Taylor Swift is a male, that's humanity right now. That's what you're dealing with. Yeah. And so I deleted that comment. If you're listening to me and you said that, that's why I have blocked people, because they do not understand. They don't fucking get it. It's not about gender. It's not about orientation. I mean, I guess it is if that's important to you, but I'm telling you, there's bigger things than gender and orientation. And so if you're all about gender and you're like, oh God, why is everybody so about orientation? Well, they're saying like, why are you all about gender? And you're all about why it's about orientation. And then you guys are both mutually assured destruction, destroying each other. By the way, slavery exists. Until we stop enslaving animals and humans in whatever manner, the suffering of humanity will continue. It was not enough to eradicate the giants that were enslaving humanity. Now we have to breed slavery out of their children, the demigods out there who believe they own everything. And when everything is disposable, everything should die someday, right? According to you. You still believe in slavery. Everything is disposable. But try telling that to a person who thinks they should die someday and think everyone should die someday. And then also think other cultures should die someday. We're giving so much latitude to people so they can change and evolve and become tolerant. People don't. They refuse to fucking change. And they're so worried about gender and sexual orientation. If that is your focus, you fucking don't get it. And you will not get it. And you'll go over the rainbow with everybody else because that's what you're focusing on. You don't focus on life. You're too worried about gender and orientation. What else do you do when people refuse to fucking change? You give them so many choices. Just like the giants, we gave them chances, and humans outsmarted their parents. They destroyed the giants that were brutal, and even the ones that couldn't change. As you can see, all the different petroglyphs and petrified forests. Remember David and Goliath? You are the demigods, and you'll end up like your parents if you don't change. Your parents from 12,000 years ago. We are now setting people free. Animals and humans are not disposable. We are heading into a sustainable world, and it will be a fight yet again. Okay? And so, I understand now why the system is doing what it's doing. And I have no problem with it. I just got to do whatever I can to stay out of harm's way and listen to indicators. But when people are that small-minded to worry about the things the arguments that they're being given to them so they can go and destroy somebody else, regardless if they don't agree with Hollywood or whatever. But that's why there was so much starting over again. And we're going to start over again during this transition to this next turning. But now you see why we are where we are. And the giants did exist. And now we're dealing with the children of the giants. We're dealing with the children, the offspring of those who are intolerant from the past. And you're seeing the comments that people are making. You're seeing the religions that they are sustaining. And you're seeing the brutality in people's ways of getting information out. And that's why we're in a great reset. All right, I'm gone.